Today, we are going to take up the chapter The Browning Version by Terence Rattigan. The Browning Version is the play that cemented Terence Rattigan's reputation as a serious, mature playwright. It is viewed as one of his best works and one of the best one-acts ever written. First performed at the Phoenix Theatre, London, England on September 8, 1948. The Browning version concerns the life of Andrew Crocker Harris, a classic schoolmaster at a British public school. Andrew is disliked by his unfaithful wife Millie and his students. Rattigan based the character and the story of the Browning version on a classics master he had at school as a student. The Browning version is sometimes derided for being too sentimental, but many critics draw a distinction between its sympathetic sentiment and over-sentimentalism. Most critics and scholars believe that Rattigan's skills as a playwright transcend such problems. Though only a one-act play, the Browning version is a well-crafted and complete psychological study indicative of his future direction as a playwright. As John Russell Taylor writes in The Rise and Fall of the Well-Made Play, the Browning version, as well as being at once Rattigan's tightest and most natural-seeming construction job up then and his most deeply felt play, marks the beginning of his most distinctive and personal drama. The story is about Andrew Crocker Harris. He has been teaching at a public school for 18 years and is forced to retire prematurely owing to ill health. Lack of success with his pupils has blighted his youthful ambition and promise, and with his embittered wife Millie, he faces a future of poverty and disappointment. Millie's desire for her own particular brand of love, emotional and physical, is as great as Andrew's desire for the fulfillment of his own platonic ideal. The tragedy is neither can satisfy the other's need. Millie has been seeking consolation in an affair with Hunter, the science master, who is about to discard her. Andrew finds his protective armor of indifference and lovelessness pierced by the action of a small boy, Taplow, who gives him a second-hand copy of Browning's translation of the Agamemnon of In this play, we see a contrast between two schoolmasters. One is Mr. Crocker Harris, a middle-aged teacher, while Mr. Frank is a young colleague of Mr. Harris. Taplow, a 16-year-old boy who is a student of lower 5th class. He is a boy who brings out the striking contrast between the two teachers. They have only one thing in common: they belong to the same school. When we compare both of them, Frank is open, Crocker Harris is reserved. Young Frank is quite open with his students. He doesn't keep any distance while dealing with his students. Taplow is not a student of his class, but still he takes a lot of interest in him. His long conversation with Taplow reveals his open nature. On the other hand, Mr. Crocker Harris is quite reserved. He doesn't mix up with his students. He maintains some distance with them. Frank cares little. Crocker Harris is a strict follower of rules. Frank doesn't believe in observing formalities. He cares little regarding rules and regulations, while Crocker Harris is a stickler to the rules. In this regard, he is different from other teachers. He never leaks out results till they are formally announced by the headmaster. Mr. Crocker Harris is even feared and respected. He has a wonderful hold over his students. They are scared of him. Frank admits that he is envious of Mr. Crocker Harris. Perhaps he lacks that effect which Harris has left over his students. Frank encourages Taplow to criticize Crocker Harris. Actually, he urges him to imitate Harris. This clearly reveals the working of his mind. He even asks Taplow to cut Crocker Harris. He lacks Harris' devotion. He teaches science but shows no interest in his subject. This shows his lack of dedication and commitment towards his profession. Crocker Harris shriveled inside like a nut. Taplow says that Crocker Harris is shriveled inside like a nut. It is quite true. He is not open. He doesn't like flattery, nor does he like anyone who likes him. He is a hard-task master. He gives extra work to Taplow even on the last day of school. This he does to punish Taplow for being absent for a day last week. Sometimes he cracks jokes. His classical jokes lack humor. No one understands them except him. They are as dry and humorless as he himself is. Millie Crocker Harris, the wife of Crocker Harris. She is a thin woman in her late 30s. She is rather more smartly dressed than the general run of schoolmasters' wives. Both Frank and Taplow feel her presence. Taplow feels uneasy. He fears that perhaps she heard him talking ill of Mr. Harris. She sends Taplow to a chemist. She agrees to take the blame on her in case Mr. Crocker Harris comes in Taplow's absence.